Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be checking out the KAL EX90 brushless micro. Now it doesn't have a very catchy name, but it definitely has a catchy price tag, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out how much this thing costs, because yeah, it's quite a hefty price tag, so I have high expectations of it. So I think this has been resold by GearBest on behalf of FPV Model, because it has come in a little case here that's got FPV Model on it, and you can also buy it from FPV Model as well. So what have we got here? Well, it's a 90mm brushless micro. We have got 1105 Dragonfly motors. They are 7500 kV, and these are the 2035 Gemfan 4-blade propellers. In fact, you get given loads of these. So this is one set here, 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets of propellers. So lots of propellers there. And then we have got a Flycolor Raptor S tower. Now this is a BL Heli S12 amp ESC, and they are saying that it supports a 2 to 3S, so I'm going to be using a 3S battery today. Now, for the price, you don't get given a battery, so I'm going to be using the Eachine Lizard's 550 milliamp battery here, but it does have, importantly, a XT30 connector, which I'm a big fan of, so yeah, that's pretty good. And then part of this tower here, it has a SP Racing F3, and it's running a on-screen display, but it's multi-Wii on-screen display. It's version 1.6, and it does have Betaflight installed on it as well. I think that's version 3.15. Now, I couldn't see anywhere to connect a FTDI adapter, but I plugged in the USB connector here, and I put the serial pass-through command in, and then that allowed me to go into multi-Wii on-screen display 1.6, and you can change some of the settings there. The only thing that I changed though is it was set up for a 4-cell battery, so I've changed that to 3-cell, and that's about it really. I quite like all the positionings of the on-screen display, apart from there's a throttle position, which I don't really use. But yeah, so I guess it does have premium parts, this, because these towers aren't cheap here, and we've also got a Runcam Micro Swift in here as well, so it's a proper CCD camera, so it should have a really good quality FPV feed. Speaking of the FPV feed, we've got a 25 milliwatt VTX on the top here, and it's actually really easy to use. So it's a 48 channel, and we've got the one button here, and then we've got these LEDs here. So this one here is for the different bands, and then this one here is for the 8 different channels, and then we have got a button on it, and that's just at the side here, so long press to change the bands and a short press to go through the individual channels there. Now, it's got a sleeve dipole antenna, and it's a strange position, this, because the optimum position of these is vertical, so this one is horizontal, so it's designed for that as well. I don't think we're going to get a great FPV reception out of that, but there you go. And then at the back there's actually a LED, and you can't see it, but the idea is that it shines through this 3D printed mount here. So yeah, this is 3D printed, and this is 3D printed, and it's also connected to the DIN as well. And what you don't get for this price is a receiver, and there's also no buzzer as well, so I would have expected both of those for the price personally. So I've added my own receiver here, so you can add any receiver you want, of course, because it is a SP Racing F3. And in order to do that, you have to take the top off, and you have to do some soldering, so there's no connectors or anything, and I did that earlier, so I'll just overlay some footage here. And yeah, it's quite tricky actually to solder, because there's already some cables soldered, but of course you're going to have to solder the positive the negative and also the signal as well. I'm using a little receiver here that is from the original QX90, I think. So yeah, quite an old one, that. So it's set up for D-Shot 300, and I've changed a couple of things. So I've set the Super 8 to 0.8. I've also changed the PIDs because they just seem to have stock 3.15 PIDs, so I'll have to see how it flies on these PIDs here. But yeah, I'm gonna go straight for the 3S battery, I think, with this one. I've also reduced the voltage warning as well in the on-screen display, but of course we don't have a beeper there, so that's something that something like this really needs, I think. Other than that, the frame is pretty nice. It looks like the carbon is tapered here, and I think it's 3mm carbon, so very thick frame. It weighs 75 grams without a battery and then 120 grams with this battery, so yeah, quite heavy actually. So yeah, it's probably going to need that 3-cell battery to give enough power. So what else do you get? Well, you get given these screws here for screwing in the propellers, and yeah, it comes in this nice pouch, but it doesn't fit in there once you've put the propellers on. You get given 2 of these straps here, these FPV model straps, but they're too big really. So I've nicked this one off another Ishin model here. Yeah, a bit too big to fit through here. And it's quite tricky feeding through one of these straps as well, because we've got all of these wires here going to the ESCs. And you've got a couple of spare screws as well for the props, but that's about it. Yeah, so for the price you don't get a lot of stuff, so hopefully it's gonna impress me when I fly it. So I've bound it up to my Taranis here, of course, and set it up. Now it was set up as AETR on the channel map in Betaflight, so I've changed that to TAER for the Taranis there. And that's about everything, so let's go and take it for a fly and see how it performs. Okay, I'm going to take off here in angle mode. I'm going to be very careful on the throttle with this being a 3-cell. Now it's just stopped raining here, and I've learned the hard way that ESCs and flight controllers, they don't like getting wet, so I'm going to have to be careful. Right, let's try for the punch. Yeah, that's a bit bonkers. Now I've had to play around with the PIDs quite a lot just to get it not to flutter whilst it was hovering, so I did a little bit of a test in the house and I was getting all sorts of fluttering sounds, so I've reduced the PIDs quite drastically. And now I don't have any fluttering. Usually suggests that the P is too high or the D. I've reduced that and now it seems to be okay. So yeah, it's not the quietest of models, but it's got a huge amount of power on the 3S. I'm upsetting some dogs. That's the kind of thing that you're going to expect with this. The high-pitched noise of the motors. Let's try acro and see if there's any problems with the tune. Seems okay. There's so much power with this thing. It kind of feels like the Leader 120 does on a 2S. Yeah, I think this is going to be great doing FPV. So no brownout so far, but I don't expect there to be any with that XT30 connector, and I've got a high-C battery here as well. Just a shame there's no buzzer. I haven't actually added one here. You could add one, but what I've done instead is change the beacon on the ESCs to as low as possible, and I've also put the command in, and that is set small underscore angle equals 180, which means that I can arm it no matter what the angle of the quadcopter is, which means if I do get stuck in the grass and lost, I can quickly arm it and hopefully I'll hear the motors going and hopefully not burn it out. Well, I have to say, this is flying very nicely. It is living up to the expectations so far, but line of sight's only what, 30% of it? It needs to do FPV nicely. So let's come in for a landing and we'll see how it flies FPV. So as soon as I put the FPV goggles on, I could quickly see the benefits of the micro Swift camera against one of those all-in-one VTX cameras. The clarity was just so much better, and that's probably not going to come through on YouTube, but through the goggles it really made a big difference, to the point where I was saying to myself, I'm not sure I could go back to a micro having one of those all-in-one cameras on there, when I know that if you put a Runcam micro Swift on there, the clarity is going to be so good. That being said, because of the antenna placement on this model, the reception wasn't very good. So you can see when I've got the quadcopter facing towards me, the antenna is pointing horizontal and backwards, which means that the signal has to go all the way through the quadcopter's frame before I can get a picture, and I was getting a lot of breakup through that, specifically, as I say, when the quadcopter's facing towards me. So a easy modification would to be just change that antenna so that it's fixed vertically. I think that's easier said than done though, because it's sort of soldered on in a horizontal fashion. You'd have to maybe bend it and figure out how to do that. So I was flying in a little bit of rain here as well, so there's a couple of little splodges that gets on the camera. There's no way to avoid that. We have had solid rain all day, and it looks like it's forecast to rain a lot anyway. So yeah, if you've seen any distortions on the camera, it's just rain hitting it. Other than that, it flew nicely. I did have to drastically change the PIDs, and I'll overlay my PIDs here. Now, they might seem really low, but if I upped the gains any higher than they were, I will get flutters. So that's probably just because of the 3-cell battery and the amount of power that is available there, finding that the PID being higher just causes vibrations and oscillations, should I say. So yeah, you're welcome to use my PIDs here. I thought that it flew pretty nicely. Now the camera angle is fixed, but it's at about 10-15 degrees, so that's fine for me, but as it's in that 3D printed mount, you can't change that whatsoever, so yeah, that might be a issue for you. Now this model feels quite heavy to hold in the hand, but with the 3S battery it had a huge amount of power, and I was able to do my normal maneuvers. I think people are probably going to compare the performance of this one to the Ishin Lizard, but I think the components in this are slightly better. The camera is definitely better. I think that was the outstanding performer with this model. That, and I suppose the ESC combination and motors is really nice as well. Now, like I say, it's not a quiet model, so you have to bear that in mind, but all in all, I like it. I do think it is a bit expensive though. It could do with a buzzer and a battery for that price, but that is just my opinion. Anyways, I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. It was a 3.5 minute flight time as I'm rushing in to land. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.